Good afternoon, everyone, to the final session for today's symposium program. It's been an amazing session. I'm always just totally amazed by when we get everyone together to share their insights and evidence. Um, my name's Mandy Charman. I'm the Senior Manager of the Outcome Practice and Evidence Network. Before we go on any further, I'll just acknowledge country. I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of all the lands we're zooming in from today. I'm on the Wurundjeri lands in the beautiful Macedon Ranges, and it is looking particularly spiffy right now. And I want to pay respects to elders past and present, Aboriginal colleagues in the audience with us today, and the Aboriginal families and children we all work and walk alongside. Always have to pause because you need to deeply feel this. Okay, on to some housekeeping slides. The way we're going to do this, we're going to have the presentations followed by a Q&A. If you can put your questions, comments, reflections, appreciation for what you're hearing into the chat, our presenters always love that. So often open your chat up. We'll also be sharing any resources that they mention so that you'll have them right there and then to take a quick look at if you want to. So another reason to open the chat. If you can, please keep yourself on mute. We've had a little bit of an issue with this today, first time ever, but just keep an eye on that. We are recording, so we really love people to leave their cameras on, but if for any reason you don't want to, knowing that it is recorded, feel free to do what suits you best. We have if there's tech issues, I mean, we all know now if we leave and come back, that often helps. If not, we've put Matt Edwards, who's a centre employee, in the chat. And on the slide here, if you just jot that down, and he usually can sort out any issues that emerge. I just also now wanted to thank our valuable sponsors. We couldn't do this type of work without our sponsors. Overall, Open is sponsored by DFFH, but we also get huge support from our sector. This year it's VACA, Anglicare, CSNet, Berry Street Impact Initiative and WCIG. It's been really exciting this year because we have some new organisations sponsoring, which is always a bit of a highlight. Okay, on to the session. I actually want to introduce someone really special today who's kindly offered to facilitate this session. Meet David Giles from Anglicare. We've asked him if he will guest facilitate just to add interest and variety. It's always a good thing. David is one of our open champions on Critical Friends. He has been a very active contributor to the Open Network for many years. He's the manager of the evidence and outcomes area at Anglicare, who are also one of our major sponsors. David's been heavily involved in Open from the start. He is an active member of the Open Evaluation Community of Practice and a member of the editorial board for the newly relaunched Children Australia Journal, which the Centre is now publishing. His generosity in sharing his extensive knowledge about research and evaluation has been stellar. I often think of the evaluation community of practice as my brain's trust. And it's this type of input that is so fundamental to an effective network, because of course Open is a network where we're trying to get everyone to work and share together. If you are interested in any of these other Open activities, please just drop us a line and we'll be able to tell you all about them. David has been really nice to offer to facilitate this session, so now I'll just hand over to you, David.
Thanks, Mandy. So for our final session of the day, we've got three very compelling presentations lined up. But first, Renee Usher from University of South Australia will present It's Not a Normal Upbringing, Views of Young Care Leaver Mothers to Enhance Parenting Supports and Break the Cycle of Intergenerational Out-of-Home Care. After that, Brave Foundation will share findings from their mixed method evaluation of the SEPT digital delivery pilot. And finally, the Council of Single Mothers and Their Children will discuss the experiences of children of single mothers, highlighting service and resource gaps. So for our first session, It's Not a Normal Upbringing, Views of Young Care Leaver Mothers to Enhance Parenting Supports and Help Break the Cycle of Intergenerational Out-of-Home Care, we have Ms. Renee Usher. Renee is a research assistant and at the Australian Centre for Child Protection. Renee holds a Master of Social Work and uses qualitative research methods to identify and challenge oppressive systemic structures that perpetuate disadvantage for vulnerable community members. Renee is dedicated to improving practice standards and social policy in the field of child protection through research and knowledge translation. So it's my pleasure to welcome Renee. Over to you, Renee.
Thank you so much, David and Mandy. It's an honour to be here today. I will just share my slides. Hopefully this is working. Is that working okay? Awesome. Okay, so hello and welcome. I am Renee Usher. I'm from the Australian Centre for Child Protection, based within the University of South Australia, and I'll be discussing our research paper on young care leaver mothers in WA, which is currently under review for publication. So this study is affiliated with the Navigating Through Life project, which I'll elaborate on shortly, and Curtin University. Just trying to get my slides to move. Okay, so firstly, I wish to acknowledge that I am presenting on the land of the Kaurna people in Adelaide. However, I do live and work on Ngala Kala and Wajak Noongar Budja in WA. I pay my deepest respects to elders past and present and recognise all First Nations people across the land, skies and waterways for their continual custodianship and connection to country and culture. Go back. So firstly, so to build a picture of our study, what we know about young out-of-home care leavers is that they experience poorer outcomes in adulthood compared to non-care experienced young people. With studies showing that care leavers have higher rates of health and mental health issues, poorer educational and employment outcomes, and increased rates of poverty and homelessness. These are serious concerns that need addressing not only across Australia, but also internationally. We understand that emerging adulthood refers to the phase from adolescence to adulthood. It's typically a gradual transition for young people aged 16 to 25 years and supported by family to help prepare a young person to acquire the skills for independent living, including financial, housing, and practical life skills. It's a time when a young person is navigating new life challenges and exploring changes in their identity. However, for young care leavers, research shows that they are often thrusted into adulthood at 18 years of age and sometimes earlier, with little or limited ongoing support and often lack the emotional and material preparedness to cope with the sudden changes, especially when it comes to pregnancy and parenthood. So moving on to a gendered lens, studies show that young care leaver females are more likely to experience teenage parenthood, have increased involvement with child protection system, and are at greater risk of having their own children removed into out-of-home care. So while the national rate of teenage pregnancy is reducing, there are particular population groups where birth rates are still significantly higher, such as young women with low socioeconomic backgrounds, those living in remote or very remote areas, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women. Before I go ahead, I want to note that when I use the term woman or female or mother in this context, I'm referring to a young person assigned female at birth. So it's difficult for us to know for certain the reasons why there are higher rates of child protection involvement in the lives of young care leaver mothers. However, some evidence suggests a historical factor due to the young women already being in the out-of-home care system. Other factors may include the impact on parenting capacity due to past trauma, mental health concerns, family domestic sexual violence, substance use, or the lack of social and financial support. Therefore, we aim to better understand these factors so that factors that might constrain or support young care leaver women transitioning from out-of-home care and have the added layer of parenthood. Oops, sorry, As part of the transition process, various jurisdictions across Australia have rolled out leaving care planning requirements. In WA, the Department of Communities, Child Protection and Family Support have the statutory responsibility for the development and implementation of out-of-home care legislations and policies, with leaving care plans being a requirement to support a young person to transition out of home care. So leaving care plans outline the assistance a young person needs from the age of 15 in preparation to leave care when they turn 18. The plans typically include housing, education, employment, ongoing access to healthcare, financial, legal and mental health supports, as well as social connections to family, friends, culture and identity. Leaving care plans also include practical living skills to support young care leavers to live independently. In addition, care leavers are entitled to access supports through non-government organisations up until they're 25 years of age. So while sexual and reproductive health are included in the department's practice manual, provisions for pregnancy and parenting supports are mostly absent, with little understanding of the development, implementation and outcomes that leaving care plans have on care leavers, or whether they're tailored to meet the different developmental needs, particularly around gender and reproductive differences. So our study formed part of a larger mixed methods prospective longitudinal research project called Navigating Through Life, or NTL, which is investigating longitudinal pathways and outcomes of young people transitioning to adulthood from the WA Child Protection System. There are 5 waves of planned interviews conducted at approximately 6-month intervals since July 2019. But at the time of our study, they were only up to wave 4. The NTL project received approval from Curtin University Human Research Ethics Committee, and the selection criteria for NTL participants were young people aged between 15 to 25 years at the time of recruitment and have had at least 6 months of lived experience care of out-of-home care in WA. Participants were recruited by the department's case managers, Leaving Care Services, Youth Services, and Create Foundation, which is the national peak body for care leavers. Social media posts, as well as snowballing. The eligibility criteria for this research that I'm presenting on was the same as the NTL study, but with the additional criteria that the young person was female and a parent. So we did a qualitative study utilising transcripts from the NTL data and analysed them using a reflective thematic analysis approach to explore the experiences of young out-of-home care mothers and the challenges that they face. 11 young women across metropolitan and regional remote areas were identified as mothers from the NTL study. 4 women identified as Aboriginal and 7 were non-Aboriginal and were aged between 18 and 25 years. 10 women had their children in their care, while 1 mother had child protection involvement, which resulted in the removal of her children. The majority of the women were single and a sole parent. We had 28 transcripts in total, and I just want to note here that the participants who completed 3 to 4 interviews that you can see down the bottom of the table, they were non-Aboriginal women, so we recognise the data is slightly skewed in terms of ethnicity. However, ethnicity wasn't our focus of our study, but could be an area of research in the future. So we identified a hierarchy of themes, with the overarching theme being the child protection system did not meet the needs of participants. The majority of the young women in the study did not remember discussing a leaving care plan with their child protection worker in the lead up to leaving care, or reported that plans and supports after leaving care were inadequate to meet their needs. Despite receiving some ongoing support to address their basic needs relating to housing, food, finances, health, participants felt under-supported and underprepared to leave care and live independently, particularly as mothers. And whilst participants seemed motivated to provide their children with a better upbringing than their own, they didn't want child protection involvement. So they found that the system of support available to them was not equipped to enable them to meet this goal. We then identified 2 core themes, which were breaking the intergenerational cycle of out-of-home care and getting needed support. A common sentiment expressed by the young women was a determination to break or avoid the intergenerational involvement of child protection and out-of-home care. They described the fear of being surveilled by the department and felt at risk of having their children removed based on their own childhood experiences. However, this fear also served as a motivation for the young mothers to prioritise their children's needs, who were determined to raise their children differently than their parents in the hope to break the cycle. Mothers also spoke about the enjoyment they derived from motherhood, their children being key motivation for their decisions and actions, and their resilience and resourcefulness to deal with and overcome adversities as young care leaver mothers. So a sub-theme was the children in the foreground, where all participants, whether their children were in care or not, described a deep love for their child, saying that being a mother had a positive impact on their life, and they strive to do their best to meet the needs of their children. Some mothers describe that having children has helped motivate them to implement positive lifestyle changes. Their children gave the mothers a new life purpose, and children also facilitated a change in identity from a kid in care to a mother. Another sub-theme is the legacy of child protection involvement, where some mothers felt their decisions were often overshadowed about where and from whom to seek support due to their history of out-of-home care. Being a child in care, there's often little to no supportive connections to their family of origin, with some mothers saying that this is because their family just isn't safe. Mothers in the study also described a stigma or a barrier about asking for help from their child protection worker, often feeling judged or worried that simply asking for help would be considered a risk. Other mothers spoke about a systemic pressure to succeed as a parent, which was compounded by the fear of being on the radar of the department or scrutinised by them about their parenting skills. Under the sub-theme, getting needed support, and as mentioned earlier, care leavers can have little connection or support from families and often rely on creating informal networks, particularly if they have a tense relationship with the department caseworkers and lack trust in the system to support them. Mothers reported not feeling adequately supported to meet their basic material needs, such as buying food, clothing, medication, completing tenancy paperwork, or practical life skills in general. Not knowing how to manage finances or having stable housing was a particular concern for most mothers, as they had little choice in the location of housing options given by the Department of Housing, where they were trying to establish a safe home environment. In addition, the systemic housing barriers included long wait times for social housing and the increasing cost of rent, with decreasing availability of private rental properties, even more so since the COVID-19 pandemic. This was particularly concerning for them as mothers because being homeless is often viewed by the department as a risk to their child's safety and a reason for removal. Mothers also highlight additional vulnerabilities as women that put them at risk of early parenthood or unwanted pregnancy. Some spoke about a lack of sexual education and support regarding reproductive developmental changes. One mother took to stealing sanitary products such as tampons and pads, etc., because the foster carers wouldn't buy them for her. Mothers also discussed the lack of pregnancy-related support from the child protection system for those who were pregnant, and an absence of planning for pregnancy or parenthood in the leaving care discussions. Another mother sought support from a caseworker for her pregnancy, but was told that the department doesn't do birthing plans unless they think it's a possible scenario, which left the mother not knowing where to go. All mothers aspired to further their education or employment opportunities, however, were limited due to their parental responsibilities, which resulted in them choosing to temporarily put education or work plans on hold. Decisions to not pursue study, work, or training were typically made due to a lack of social and financial support to care for the children while the young mother studied or worked. Mothers also stated the high cost of childcare services as a barrier, and some mothers simply desired to be present and prioritise their child's needs. Most mothers were receiving Centrelink payments as their main source of income, which is below the minimum wage and not sustainable to accommodate the cost of living and raising children. So finding supportive relationships. In place of support from family, parenting and leaving care experiences were highly dependent on the young women's relationships with other individuals in their lives, be they friends, intimate partner, foster carers, or workers within the services they were accessing. These informal support networks and relationships were built by the mothers for social connection and a sense of safety, developing practical life skills, and modelling positive relationships. In addition, Navigating parenting arrangements and intimate partner relationships was also a crucial issue for young mothers. Those who were sole parents described a double-edged sword. Parenting can be a hard and lonely journey without the support from a partner to share childcare and financial responsibilities. However, single parenting also meant participants could be independent in their parenting decision-making, which was also seen as advantageous by some mothers. For most mothers, though, family, domestics, and sexual violence was a factor for having full-time care of their children with no contact with the child's father. However, those who were co-parenting valued the role a father played in their children's lives because they didn't want their children to be in a situation where they only had one parent. So this study set out to explore the experiences of WA care leaver mothers as they transition from out-of-home care into independent adulthood. Leaving care planning is an important step that progresses and plans the transition from out-of-home care into independent adulthood. However, the majority of the young people in our study did not remember having a leaving care plan. One explanation for this may be that they were excluded from their own leaving care planning process, or leaving care planning may have occurred, but may not have been clearly communicated to the young person. Leaving care planning is an opportunity for young people to articulate their aspirations and identify their needs for the future. Therefore, it's important for young people to participate in the decision-making about their own lives. Ensuring care leavers' involvement in decision-making about support for emerging adulthood not only upholds a critical human right, but also allows for meaningful relationships to build over time, which supports healing, promotes stability, and builds trust. Participation in leaving care planning is critical for all care leavers in general. However, for young care leaver women who may have intersecting vulnerabilities associated with young motherhood and single parenthood, getting leaving care planning right is critical to not only ensure the needs of young mothers are met, but also their children. While the mothers did confirm that they were supported in a broader sense, their care and leaving care experiences did not involve planning and information critical to them as women, given the increased rates of early pregnancy for care experienced women. The reported absence of information and support for female reproductive changes, sexual education, and pregnancy within leaving care planning is concerning and suggests a need to add a gendered lens to matters addressed during leaving care plans. In addition, our findings highlight the conflicting duality within the child protection system. On one hand, the system is the corporate parent of care leavers with a statutory responsibility to provide support that meets the needs of care leavers. Yet on the other hand, the same system has a statutory capability to remove children, or in this case, its corporate grandchild. The high rates of child removal for this population in and of itself infers that the child protection system is setting young out-of-home care women up to fail. Therefore, at a policy level, the child protection system has a responsibility to young care leavers as their legal guardian to ensure that they are properly supported and equipped with the necessary skills to transition into adulthood. It is possible that child protection workers scrutinise normal parenting skills of care leaver mothers more than non-care leaver mothers, and don't give care leaver parents a space to settle into parenthood, which can then become part of the risk assessment. Our findings also highlight the importance of addressing child care-related barriers to access employment and education to alleviate the broad challenges associated with socioeconomic disadvantage. The young women in our study also described the stigma associated with being a child in care and a young mother. They reported barriers to access pregnancy and parenting supports from the child protection system. However, care leaver mothers described drawing on their own experiences in care as motivation to parent their children differently than their own parents and are determined to be a good mum. Several studies have explored the social discourse of single motherhood and observed in general, single mothers are constructed as economically flawed citizens. These negative assumptions, social assumptions, can also impact children, leading to ongoing social, emotional, and psychological hardships. Shifting the narrative around care leaver single mothers to a strength-based approach is critical to amending policies and practices to better support care leaver women and their children. So as a final takeaway, we need to enhance how department workers do leave-in care planning by starting early and including pregnancy and parenting supports and options. Adopting a gendered lens and a strength-based approach to ensure a holistic approach of support is provided to care leaver mothers because they are resilient and they want a better life for their children. If we can do this, then we are one step closer to breaking the cycle of intergenerational out-of-home care so that we can keep families together. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Renee. That was very thought-provoking and very relevant to many of us. I could see some of the comments in the chat, people saying that. I'm personally very curious about your thoughts on how practitioners in the field might balance addressing fear of child protection involvement and these young women's own children becoming involved in the system with providing necessary support and addressing some of the risks you talked about. That seems like quite a tightrope and something to do delicately. Do you have any thoughts or observations around that?
I think one of the things that came through the transcripts as well is when we investigated more on, especially the practice manual, the policies are good. Like the way that it's laid out is well, and it just seems like there's a lack of translation from policy to actually following that through to support the young people. So there seems to be a disconnect there, and we're not quite sure whether, it really depends on the worker that you get. That came through quite a lot as well. Some will go above and beyond to support the young person, where others don't. And we're not sure whether or not there could be, there's thoughts that some workers might become complacent depending on how long they've been working with families. Yeah, it's an area that we're really interested to probably explore a little bit more. And I think I just want to highlight that the NTL project asks all these different questions. So we've been able to derive the information that we have, the data for this project, but it wasn't direct, the questions weren't directive. So it would be good to actually go back to the mothers now and explore this area a little bit further.
Absolutely. I could imagine there being quite a bit of value in that.
Yeah.
It's interesting you're talking about the variability between workers. One of the comments Sarah made in the chat was asking about what is perhaps the reluctance to provide these supports and get across this stuff. Is it having a busy caseload and administrative burden? Could it be other factors? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so we explored that a little bit as well. We know that a lot of the caseworkers have they have high caseloads. There's a high turnover of staff as well, so that longevity of relationship building is not there, which I guess for particularly this cohort of young people, they already lack trust in people because of their experiences. So it's kind of like there needs to be more emphasis in providing a safe relationship for these young people to flourish and to feel supported and, to feel part of the community.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And Mandy just commented in the chat, asking what else the system or practitioners might do better to prepare young people in care for all facets of adulthood, and looking at your presentation to ensure we're consistently covering these issues around potential early motherhood.
Yeah, sorry, what was your question?
What else could the system or practitioners do to better prepare young people for this potential eventualities, I suppose, looking at the inconsistency of how this is covered?
Yeah, that's a challenge in itself. Without us knowing the experiences of the department workers, and this is only one side of the story, and perspectives can be different. So we've just taken what the young people have told us, but it'll be good to go back and take this now back to the department and say, this is what we've collated from the young people. What's your experience and like, how do you do the leave-in care planning? So I do feel like there is room to further explore this to get a better picture of the big picture.
Absolutely, that makes sense. There are some additional questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we had run out of time. My apologies, Tina. I would encourage you to contact Renee directly and continue these discussions. Renee, thank you again for such a wonderful
Thank you so much.
presentation.